Hello and welcome to episode 22 of the Tea in Tokyo podcast and to another Gaijin guide. My name is Soumya.
And I'm Ellie.
And what are we talking about this time?
So this week we talk about how to get a English teaching job in Japan.
Yep, that's right. That and a little bit more coming up right now. So, if you want to teach in Japan, first of all, you're going to have to choose what program you want to be involved with.
So there's four main types of programs. The first one being where, as you know, we work for is an Aikawa. The second main one would be an ALT or an assistant language teacher. Next, you have working in early childhood at like kindergartens. And finally, you have working at private schools, which sort of overlaps with all the other three, whether or not they're like a private Aikawa ALT position or kindergarten.
Yeah, exactly. So let's go through each of them. We'll let you know. We'll give you some details on them. So first of all, Aikawa.
This is basically, it's like a cram school. So it's like after work or after school classes.
Wait, what's a cram school? Where did you hear that?
It's a term that's very common in like Asian countries. It's like after people go to school, they go to cram school where they basically it's like extra study where they cram for their exams. Yeah, it's after school, after work. You can also work during the day, but it's not in the classroom. So you can work with adults or children, you can teach one-on-one, you can teach groups. It depends on which company you go for and also what your preferences are.
Yeah, and these companies are always like private companies. And yeah, it's quite good because there's a huge variety of the type of people that you can teach and also a huge variety in when you can teach.
And it's also good, especially if you specifically want to teach adults. Because most, like, ALT positions, it's in the name, it's an assistant language teacher, you're in the classroom. Whereas in Aikawa, you're out of the classroom, so you can choose if you teach adults or school children.
Yeah, we're going to do it later, but maybe we should just do it now. Let's just go through some of the Aikawas that you could teach in. So one, for example, is GABA. GABA is one of the largest Aikawas, and what separates GABA from the other ones, the fact that you get to choose your own schedule. So you don't really work full-time or part-time. Instead, you work in a per-class basis, so you get to choose how many classes you teach, when you teach them. If you want to take holidays, you can just take it whenever you like. There's no paid holidays. There's nothing like that.
So that's like the downside is there's no guaranteed work.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
So this is like, it's one where it's popular for people who want to take lots of holidays. I know a lot of people who work for GABA for example, they might also be PhD students or university students.
Yeah.
And so they just work when they're available. Or for example, I know someone who is a consultant normally and he works part-time for GABA when he's not getting much work in his other job.
If your main purpose of teaching here in Japan is the teaching itself, right, and you want to experience working like in Japan and you're not too concerned about the traveling aspect of it, and I know a lot of people at my work are like that, then GABA is probably not really for you.
And I'd say even in Aikawa in general is probably not for you in that case.
Yeah, true, yeah. I would consider something else. But if you're here mostly for travel and you're not really worried about money, like if you don't care about saving money, if all you want to do is, just spend it, then yeah, GABA's probably a good option.
So if you do your own research on GABA, you'll probably find the further back you go, the more negative the reviews are going to be. So this company used to have a bad reputation because of the downside of not having guaranteed hours. However, I believe that their management or their ownership changed a few years ago, and they've been working pretty hard to get back into the good books.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's one of those companies where it's got its good sides in that you've got complete freedom over your schedule, but then the downside of that is there's no certainty around your income or around when you're going to be working.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, flexibility but no certainty. So another big one is Aeon or Eon. Is it Eon or Aeon?
I think it's Eon.
Eon, okay.
Spelled A-E-O-N.
Yeah. So Eon's a big one as well. The difference is
the salary.
Yeah,
job.
It's a salaried position. So you can actually work full-time or part-time. By the way, one thing about GABA actually is that your pay is you start off on 1,500 yen per class.
Per 40-minute class.
Yeah, so each class is 40 minutes. And GABA is the only company that has a belting system where the longer you work, and depending on if you do certain training, if you do certain like training opportunities that they have, then you can potentially earn more.
And they've also got like monthly bonuses. Right?
Yeah.
Where like the more you work, the more you earn.
Yeah. The maximum is 2,200 yen per class. Now at Aeon, they actually have a very high starting salary compared to the other Aikawas. So on average, if you're at a full-time Aikawa, you're going to start off at 250,000 yen. Or, well, that's just going to be your salary. Aeon, it's actually 270,000.
Yeah. One of the good things that you always hear about Aeon is that you'll notice if you work for them and you've worked at other teaching jobs in Japan, that there is a high level of professionalism within the workplace, which apparently is one of those things that you don't really realise you're missing out on until you've experienced actually having it in Japan. So supposedly that's like the thing that sets them apart when you're working there. A bad thing about them, I think it's a bad thing about them, is you're required to live in their accommodation that they provide, which are these tiny little minuscule apartments, which are for single people only. So if you come as a couple, you can't share accommodation.
And wait, is this the one that you got an interview for?
Yeah, I interviewed for it, and they were really nice, but I ended up rejecting the job offer because they wanted me to go to a second interview. Well, not the job offer, the second interview, because they wanted me to have my second interview in Australia.
Yeah, so that's actually kind of weird too.
And I was like, I'm not going to, so they require, I think it's like the second, so if you pass the like online interview, the second interview is like basically like a training course. It's like a 3-day course where you go in and you get tested at the end. And they wanted me to fly to Australia for it, and I was like, well, I'm not flying to another country for a job interview, right? Like there was no assurances that I'd pass the interview and get the job. So I chose not to go. But like the guy was really cool who interviewed me. He was pretty nice. He said that sometimes they can arrange for the second interview to be online as well, but like that didn't work out for me. And then the other thing with this company is it is a sales-based company. So you as the teacher are required to push the sale of textbooks to the students.
Yeah.
So if you're not comfortable like using your position of power as a teacher to make, to basically like, I don't know, like falsely advertise. Well, not falsely advertise because you might believe in the textbooks, but it is about the money, right?
Yeah, you have to be a salesperson.
Yeah.
Like this would not be a job for me because I hated like being that pushy salesperson anytime I had a job like that.
See, and I was always okay with sales. Like as long as it was something that I could actually like get behind, I've been okay with sales.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you're not a salesperson, this is not the Aikawa for you. But it does have the benefits of, if you're single and you want your accommodation sorted for you, this is a good company.
Yeah.
I think they reimburse your travel as well, your flights. Whereas like GABA is you sort your own accommodation. They help you out a little bit, but you're ultimately responsible for it, and they don't reimburse your flights.
Yeah, that's right. So the next one is
Nova. I saw a review on Nova, and it's like very fondly, like this isn't necessarily like a mean, although it's kind of inherently mean, but it's fondly referred to as the McDonald's of Aikawas. In that it's like cheap and cheerful and fast, right? Like lots of people use Nova to come to Japan, like they sponsor the visa for them, they get some experience working, and then they're out the door once they find a better job.
Yeah, Nova's the one that we applied for, right?
I interviewed for this one before we really knew when we wanted to come, and they wanted me to start immediately. And I'd said in my application I didn't want to start for like 3+ months. And then at the end of the interview he was like, cool, so how soon can you get here? We want you starting ASAP. And I was like, no. But like the interviewer, again, the guy who interviewed me was really nice.
Yeah.
He was really cool, he was really helpful. He gave me like his personal advice, having been a teacher once. So, like I personally, even though I didn't work for them, I had a good experience.
That kind of shows, I think, also, like it kind of highlights the McDonald's part of it, where the other companies, they kind of wait a while. They kind of want to research you a little bit more as well, and they want to integrate you at like the perfect time kind of thing. Whereas Nova is kind of like, hey, start right now. We just need because their turnover is probably so high.
Well, yeah, like it's not like they offered me the job. They didn't send me a contract immediately.
Yeah.
But the end of the interview concluded with him basically being like, "So when can you get here?"
Yeah, right.
So like, there's only so much you can say about the various Aikawas because they're all basically the same thing, right? They're all working, like either some of them, most of them offer one-on-one and group classes.
Yeah.
And you also have to express whether or not you're willing to work with children, because some of them also have children classes. So they're all like pretty similar, but I suppose they do have those small differences, like if it's a salary versus hourly wage.
There's another one as well called Burlets, which lets you work full-time, part-time, or per lesson. So it's got quite a like variety. You earn $250,000 full-time like normal, but if you want to do the per lesson one, you get $1,900 per lesson, which is more than GABA, but unlike GABA, you can't belt up.
Yeah.
Aikawa's the main, one of the two main teaching jobs that people have when they move to Japan. The other one is the assistant language teacher, or assistant language teacher,
So
ALTs.
Yeah.
So these are working with public schools here in Japan. So this is a governmental job.
Yeah. So if you've researched working in Japan at all prior to this, I would be surprised if you had not already heard about the JET program.
Which stands for Japan Exchange and Teaching Program.
Yeah, so the JET program is sort of seen as being like top tier of teaching in Japan. It's like if you meet someone at a bar in Japan, like a foreigner, and like you ask them where they're working from, if they work for like JET, they'll be very proud of it, because it's very hard to get into.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
It's a competitive program, and it has one of the highest pays. They subsidize your living costs a lot.
Yeah.
They reimburse you for your flights. They, it's a good job to have. However, you don't get a choice in where you get to live. You're generally placed rurally. Like, you're pretty lucky if you're placed in a big city.
Yeah.
One of my friends who I studied at university with, she got placed in Tokyo, which is like unheard of for newcomers, because normally the ones who get the big cities are ones who have like done their time in the rural towns, and they request to be moved to the city when a spot becomes available.
Yeah.
So the downside of the JET program is, that you're generally going to be rural. And apparently it's also one of those ones where it's a assistant language teacher position, and often in the rural areas there's not actually that much work to do, but you're still required to go in for your full day. Like a part of like Japanese work culture is that the average worker is expected to stay at work until their boss leaves. Like, be there before the boss and be there when the boss leaves. So even if there's no work to do with the JET program, you have to go into the office, and you're not allowed to do anything else. You're not allowed to bring a book. You're not allowed to, like, have your phone out. You've just got to sit there and wait for 8 hours. And I've heard a lot of people's stories about how that's what drove them away. So depending on the area you get, like, some areas you'll be overwhelmed with work. But some, it's like, can be very boring.
And also, so it's an assistant language teacher role. So unlike Aikawa's where you're teaching by yourself.
We didn't even say what the ALT is.
Yeah, so instead, unlike Aikawa's where you're teaching by yourself, to a student, this one you're just assisting the teacher. So either the teacher is the one teaching and then you're assisting them, helping out in the class, or you're teaching but the teacher will be there with you.
So there'll be like a Japanese staff member there.
If you want an ALT job, generally, unlike Aikawa's, they really, really like people that know how to speak at least a little bit of Japanese, because the students are Japanese, a lot of the material is going to be in Japanese, so you probably need to know how to speak Japanese for this.
So, like, for example, in the JET interviews, you don't have to speak Japanese, but they do a Japanese test at the end, I believe. Just like a brief one to see, like, if you've said you can speak Japanese, they will test it. Yeah,
so, like, I didn't even try to go for the JET program because, I didn't want a job like a full-time job like that anyway, but also I have no Japanese, so I knew it was going to happen.
Well, like, the main reasons we didn't go for the JET program were that reason. It's also, you can't choose where you're going to be placed, so there's no guarantee we would have been in the same, like, even, like, side of the country.
Yeah, so another reason why, like, if you're here as a couple, that might not be the best one.
And also, it's like, I can't remember what the third reason. Oh, yeah, so they only have intake once a year.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
So, and it takes a while. Like, you have to apply in, like the end of the year in, like, October. I think that applications in New Zealand, at least, end in October. Like, you have, like, a couple of weeks to apply, and then you don't actually start the job until, like, midway through the next year.
Because obviously they do follow the school year, so you have to start at the beginning of the school year or at the beginning of a certain semester. Whereas in Aikawa's you can start whenever you like. But then the benefit also, the fact that it's a school means that you do get holidays. So like
paid holidays.
Yeah, when the kids get summer break, you also get summer break.
Yeah.
So that's like a big benefit, actually.
I think the main benefit, that, as I see it, is how much they subsidise your housing. I think they subsidise everyone the same amount. So if you're living in Tokyo, you might still end up paying quite a bit, but you can probably get a nicer house. Like, you'd be paying the same as what we get, but you'd be living in a really nice place.
Yeah.
And it means if you're in a rural area, you could be paying like next to nothing because they're subsidising it so much.
Ellie and I met someone who was paying 10 because she was in the JET program, and her rent ended up being 10,000 yen a month,
which is like $100.
Yeah, which is crazy. Like, our one's 107,000. So yeah, you're probably going to be saving a lot of money going the JET program, and you're going to be earning a lot of money as well. So
it's like a well reputed one. However, Sonia wasn't sure if I should mention this because it's like an anecdotal situation. But a girl I went to university with, she came to Japan in the JET program, and one of her work colleagues and work friends was raped by another work colleague from the JET program while on a work like assignment with them. And like basically when she went to report it to the workplace, because she wanted their support reporting it to the police because her Japanese wasn't good enough, they brushed it off, and like their words were, and I quote, that like, why did they expect them to punish him? Because it was the same as punishing a kid from taking candy from the candy store. So they did not like support her in that situation. And this could just have been her area. But like, for me, that like thoroughly put me off the JET program.
Yeah, I will say though, there's definitely a big cultural difference as well in Japan compared to Western countries when it comes to sexual harassment in general. For example, I know even at my work, and by the way, Ellie and I, if you haven't noticed, we haven't been mentioning where we've been working, because
we've decided not to.
Yeah, we think it'd be kind of bad just to mention where we work right now. But for example, even at my work, I know a girl who was like teaching a class, and then the guy just randomly like grabbed her boobs or something.
Yeah, literally just like squeezed her boobs.
Yeah, now if we were in New Zealand, or if you're in any Western country, really, you'd probably expect that person to, number one, be kicked out of the school, and then number two, there might be some kind of investigation done.
Some charges laid.
Yeah. Here it's very different, where the only thing that happened is they made sure that that person can no longer teach with her. Like, she doesn't have to worry about him being in the same class as her. But apart from that, he's still, he's walking around. Like, I had him in my class a couple of months ago. So yeah, like the entire dynamic, the entire culture is pretty different.
Yeah, so it's not necessarily reflective of like the JET program's culture around sexual assault. It maybe is more reflective of Japan in general. But still, for me, that was, especially when it's such a well-renowned company, like I don't know if anything ended up coming from it, because she ended up being like, as she should, she was quite vocal about what happened after it got to the point where I think they reprimanded her in the end or something. Like, it was crazy how poorly they handled it.
Yeah.
So yeah, just as like a word of warning, of like our, not necessarily my personal experience, but like our anecdotal experience with that program. Yeah.
Now, the JET program is actually just one way to get an assistant language teaching job here.
Yeah.
There's actually 3 ways. So you can either go through the JET program, you can go through dispatch company, or you can do direct hires where the school itself will hire you. That's not going to happen if you're overseas, though. That's really for people that are living here.
No, that's what happened to my cousin. So my cousin's girlfriend, she worked in Japan years ago, and she was a direct hire. And so when we told her that we were moving to Japan, she was not sure about it because she did not have a good experience as a direct hire. Because the problem with that was, and again, I think it was like a cultural difference, but she was in a small rural town where she was basically the only English speaker. And because instead of being in like a big company where there was lots of other like foreigners who you can like interact with, expats who you can get to know, or even like Japanese staff who speak English, she was working as in like the sole English teacher in this private school. And I think it was just like very lonely because there was not other people who were in the same experience as her.
Yeah, and that's the other thing as well, where if you're working at Aikawa, you're definitely going to have more English speakers to talk to. Your managers will be English speakers.
Lots
they
of
might
them
be
have
foreigners.
rules that you have to speak English while you're there.
Yeah.
Like, you're not allowed to speak Japanese to the clients.
Yeah, I mean, I know that even in jet program schools, they do have get-togethers with all the English-speaking teachers. But again, yeah, if you're in a remote area, that might not happen.
Yeah, if you've been directly hired by the school.
Yeah.
Like, there may not be any other English speakers in the school entirely, apart from the other English teacher.
And also, in terms of the cultural differences, it might be easier being in an Aikawa where, you can kind of discuss that with your manager, and they have a better understanding of where you're coming from, and they can help you out. Whereas when you're an assistant language teacher, you might not have that.
Although there is the benefit in that situation of you're more immersed in the culture.
Yeah, true. There's that.
So so depending on how you're viewing it, it could be a downside or an upside, right?
Yeah.
Like, you have the extra support and the companionship in a big Aikawa or a big ALT that's English speaking only.
Yeah.
Versus, a private, direct hire. One of the other big ALT programs, dispatch programs, is Interact, by the way.
Ah, yep.
So, that's another one where you teach in rural Japan and you're teaching in the classroom. So I hadn't actually heard of that one before I moved to Japan, but apparently it is one of the big ones.
Most people get jobs through direct hires. So yeah, look up individual schools, I guess. And
apparently it's easier once you're in Japan to do, but you can also get hired directly by the Board of Education, in which case you're probably going to get paid more.
Yeah.
Because, you don't have the company that hired you taking a cut, but it's supposedly not that easy to get that done.
So the next one is kindergartens, right?
Yeah, so kindergartens, the main kindergarten program is the JIEC program. I think they also do other levels, but it is mainly a kindergarten based one. So generally you need at least 2 years experience teaching to work in a kindergarten, or experience with kids. I mean, I don't really know what else you can really say. When I look on Gaijin Pot for jobs, a big proportion of them are kindergarten jobs, so I think it's kind of common. But you might want to have some early childhood experience. For all of these, you have to have a degree.
Yeah.
On a side note.
Okay, and then there's private schools. The JET program and the assistant learning teacher jobs, those are private school. We were talking about public school jobs then. You can also get private school jobs. Now, first of all, the good news is that you get paid a lot more in these. But the jobs are much harder to get.
I don't know if this is a private school or if it's just one of the well-known ones, but Horizon International School is one of those ones.
Okay.
But you're you need to be a licensed teacher to often teach at private schools.
Yeah, they have much stricter requirements for you to get a job there. And also from what I've heard is that a lot of them, they offer tenure positions like they do at university. So there'll be teachers there that have worked for 30 years. And that's why it's also a lot harder to get jobs. It's just a lot fewer openings. Because I guess it's because they're such good jobs that people just want to stay forever.
Yeah, right.
So
it means that if it works out for you, you've got a good thing going.
Yeah.
I wanted to also mention, you can also teach at the universities sometimes here. The main one that is known for hiring that is Westgate. But for Westgate, you need to have a degree, you need to have experience teaching. Often you also need ESL certification.
Yeah.
So that one, it's harder to get into, but if you want to teach at a university, it's another one where it pays really well. It pays starting 270,000 yen. Universities is an option, but it is again quite competitive.
Yeah.
And you've probably would have had to get here through one of those other companies and get your experience, because sometimes they require 1,000 hours of actual English teaching, and then you can apply for places like Westgate.
Okay, and so now the requirements that you need to be able to teach. Like we said before, the first thing you have to have a bachelor's degree if you want to teach.
From an English-speaking university. Yeah,
from English-speaking university. The good news is that you can get a bachelor's degree in anything. So, for example, R1 was in psychology and biology, but they don't care. As long as it's English-speaking, you could have a degree in math and it'd be fine.
Yeah.
And then you also need a visa. Now, we spoke about this in our last Gaijin Guide episode, that sometimes the school that you're with will help you with that visa. They'll sponsor the visa for you. Other times you won't.
So the most commonly sponsored visa is the Humanities Specialist visa.
Yeah.
And to get this one, you have to have a bachelor's degree.
Yeah.
So we do have a friend who He does not have a degree. He's like a tradie, so he has he did an apprenticeship, but he doesn't actually have a degree. But he came here on just like the 1-year generic work visa, and taught privately. So that's also an option. Like if you only want to be here for a year, again, it means you've got no guaranteed money, no guaranteed income, but it's an option if you don't have a degree.
So you could teach through something like Hello Sensei?
Yeah. So Hello Sensei is like a website where you basically post your own profile, your own prices, and then the students contact you.
Yeah.
So again, it's like competitive because there's a lot of people who like work at these other jobs and then also do that on the side.
Yeah, most people use it to supplement their salary. They don't use it as as their number one salary. Now, the other thing you need is savings. Again, this is something that we've talked about before. Most places recommend that you have at least $3,000.
I think most recommend 5,000, right?
Not from what I've seen.
Are you sure you weren't looking at US dollars?
Yeah, true. That's probably
Because I
it.
think most of them recommend 5,000 NZ. But like we've said in that last Gaijin guide, 5,000 will not get you far. I recommend 20,000.
No, that's kind of ridiculous.
But that's what we did, and that's laughed at us.
For two people, and there are a lot of other factors.
Okay,
Generally, if you come here
10,000
and you
for one
work,
person.
then... And also, one small thing, you're going to need it a lot. Passport-size photos. Honestly, they need so many passport-size photos from you with, like, the exact dimensions and stuff. And you think, well, why can't... they already have my passport. Why do they also need a passport-size photo? For some reason, they need it.
Yeah.
They just need it. So if you're gonna, if you have to get a new passport and you need a photo anyway, print out like 30 of those just in case. Oh yeah, one thing that, it probably doesn't affect a lot of people, but I know there are some people that wonder if they can come to Japan when they've been like arrested or if they have some sort of criminal
record.
Yeah. Criminal record. Yeah, you can. So basically the rule is that as long as if you did a violent crime or if you've been in prison for longer than a year, then you're not allowed into Japan. But other than that, if you've just got speeding tickets, you should be all good.
Yeah.
Yeah. They don't mind that.
Although you might struggle to find work.
Yeah, true, there is that. Yeah. So now let's just talk about the work culture and stuff. What our experiences has been like.
So the first thing about work culture that for me was different from my past work experience, having taught at a university and also worked in other office environments, was the dress codes here are a lot stricter. Everyone wears a suit basically, and you don't have just at every job. One of our friends used to teach at an elementary school and she didn't have to wear a suit. But if you're going to be working at an Aikawa, and also I think pretty much all of the programs we mentioned today do have strict dress codes.
Yeah, they do, yep.
Where, even as a woman, you have to wear a suit. So I'd, never worn a suit before, and I bought some suits just for this. You've got to wear, a fully buttoned up, shirt with a collar under it. Boys have to wear ties. You can't have tattoos. You can have tattoos, but they must not be visible.
Yeah.
One of my work colleagues has tattoos on his fingers, and he has to wear sticky plasters on his fingers every day.
Oh, wow. They do, there is... for example, I know at our company, and I'm pretty sure every other company is like this too, there's a summer uniform and there's a winter uniform because the temperature is, in Japan varies so greatly between summer and winter.
The government recommends having two different dress codes.
So in winter, we had to wear the suit jacket, tie. But now that it's summer, we don't actually have to wear the suit jacket. We don't have to wear a tie. You can roll your sleeves up. Yeah, that's definitely good because, man, the temperature has changed so dramatically. It's crazy.
And, to be fair, when it comes to dress code, I've definitely noticed, at my specific location at my work, and it might vary from location to location and company to company, they're not actually generally as strict on the dress code as you'd think. So, for example, at our work, we have to wear dark clothes. That's a requirement that you have a dark suit. But I have noticed that lots of the teachers who have been there for a while will wear, for example... the girls will wear suit pants, but then they'll wear just a normal top, I don't know the word is not a t-shirt because it doesn't have a collar or sleeve. It's just a normal shirt.
I feel if someone's been there for a long time, they definitely stop caring.
And and the other thing with those,
because there's a guy at my work that wears jeans.
Yeah, there's a lady at my work who's the same. She wears a shirt but with jeans.
Yeah.
And but what I was meaning with that is they also all often wear really light coloured clothes.
Right.
Which is technically against the rules at our work.
In terms of the students, man, we get such a variety of students.
Such a big variety.
A lot of it it depends where you work. So, for example, when I'm working at Tokyo Station, there's no apartments there. It's all businesses. Most of my clients are business clients, and a lot of them have been sent, like their work has literally told them that they have to go take English lessons. So for the majority, of the time, I'm teaching like people who are above the age of like 30, anywhere from like 30 to 60, although there's quite a lot of younger people too. But they're almost, 90% are there because of business. Whereas I know at other locations, even within Tokyo,
Like
if
even
it's more
especially
suburban,
more suburban and rural ones.
yeah, a lot of their students will be teenagers or university students.
Or like often it's like retired people or like the housewife type.
Yeah.
Who like are just like looking for a hobby.
I mean, there's even a difference between, like, for example, Tokyo and Shinagawa. If you don't know where those are, like, look at a map. They're not that far from one another.
They're both considered pretty like central in their own way. Like Tokyo is obviously more central, but Shinagawa is still like a pretty busy business district.
Yeah, for sure. There's heaps of businesses like Sony and stuff around Shinagawa, and yet even then, like, I notice quite a big difference where there's a lot fewer business people. There's a lot more children.
I think it's because it's also a like residential area.
Yeah,
whereas
yeah.
Tokyo is pretty much primarily a business
I think
area.
that makes a big difference for sure. And yeah, I mean, for the most part, I have had 99% of my students have been great. I've really enjoyed talking to them, and that's one of the best things about getting a job in an English language school or just teaching English in general is being able to talk with just random Japanese people and figuring out you
really
learn so much more about the culture
and interacting with people who like I would probably never interact with in another scenario, like like big top tier CEOs of like big ass companies.
Yeah, the other day I spent a good 30 minutes of the lesson just talking about paragliding with this guy, and I was like, man, I've never met someone who paraglide,
So it's really cool. Like you definitely get to meet lots of people. One thing that if you haven't been to Japan before, that I think I still sometimes like think I'm going to get a complaint from my client, because one thing about like the way like Japanese people express themselves is they're generally a lot more like neutral facially and also vocally than what we're used to.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot less, I don't know, what is the word that I'm looking for? It starts with E. And it's
Expressive?
Expressive, although I don't think that's that quite word. I don't know, but like their voices, they don't have as much like
enunciating.
Yeah, like emotion, enunciation. I don't know. So like often I'll get it to the end of the lesson and I'll be like, oh my god, that was terrible. They hated it, and I expect that they're gonna like complain about me. But it turns out that I'm starting to realize that like a lot of Japanese men specifically are like just normal. Like they're not as expressive. And I noticed I was teaching the other day and it had. On the client's profile, it had like, the goals for them to move up to the next level of English. And one of them was that they had to learn to be more expressive.
Right.
Because the way that they speak, they have no like, oh my god, I can't think of the right word. I'm going to think of it like after we're done recording this. But like, like when they ended a sentence, like if it was a question, they didn't like raise their voice at the end.
Yeah. Isn't that enunciate? That's just how you enunciate
I don't know
enunciate
anymore.
words.
I'm so like...
That's literally enunciate.
Okay, so that was one of the things they had to do to be able to level up was they had to learn to enunciate because it's not natural. So...
And also some other cultural stuff, just like some small ones that I can think of right now is, for example, when a student is coming towards you, it's polite to like watch them come in, and then when they leave, it's polite to watch them leave, and you're not meant to turn your back on a client. Like, it's very rude to turn your back. There's all these, like, small things which we wouldn't really think about.
Well, like, apparently the not turning your back thing is to do with, like, in customer service, it's considered rude to show your back.
Right. And also, another thing I actually thought of is the landscape of teaching is kind of changing now, especially because of coronavirus. So the two things is, number one is a face mask. When we were teaching 2 months ago, we basically never wore a face mask. In fact, we never did. There would be occasional students who would wear it, but generally they wouldn't. Now everyone wears face masks, and to be honest, I don't see that really changing in the future. I feel like now it's ingrained to the point where they might continue doing that for a long time.
I hope they get rid of the face shield at least.
Yeah, at least the face shield. And then the other thing is also online lessons. So our company didn't do any online lessons.
Well, they had a couple.
Oh yeah, they had a couple at my work. And now online lessons are becoming more and more important, where eventually they want everyone to start doing online lessons. And a lot of other companies are doing that too. So I think it's going to definitely change.
I wonder how
next
much
year.
less of a demand there will be for English teachers as well, because of coronavirus, the world is becoming less like global almost. Like, there's less travel
Yeah.
between countries, and so
Well, no, I feel like that's pretty...
I think they're still going to have to speak English, but I wonder if there will be like a slight decrease in the demand.
That's like a phenomenon that won't last very long, though. Whereas the online teaching, I think, it's like with any other technological advance, where as soon as it happens once, then it's just going to continue growing, and there's probably going to be more and more online teaching and less teaching in the actual class.
Yeah.
Things are going to change quite quickly in this space.
Also, like, again, it comes down to like for example, if it's like an Aikawa that focuses on conversational English, like those ones are probably going to keep with in-person classes, because the whole point, the student's like point of going there is to practice conversation.
Yeah.
Whereas if it's an Aikawa where it's got like a focus on like learning the grammar rules, that might be okay to do online.
Yeah.
Because it's not really about like conversing.
Okay, well, there's really only one last thing that I wanted to mention was buying supplies. For the most part, in all these places, you're going to have to buy your own supplies. Except, well, especially in Aikawas. In assistant language teaching spaces, they probably will provide it for you. But, yeah, in the Aikawas, you're probably going to have to buy, like, your pen. Although they're all tax deductible, so keep your receipts.
Yeah.
Keep your receipts for everything like that. Not only supplies, but also for transport. They should be able to pay you back for those.
The only other thing I'd say is when you're deciding, once you've decided if you want to work at an Aikawa, an ALT, kindergarten, or privately, you then need to think about where you want to work. Like, if you have a preference, that will also then affect what options you have, like which companies are where. Like we said with the JET program, you don't get a choice. So if you want to work for them, you've got to let go of any like specific choice. I think you can express preference, but there's no guarantee. Whereas with some of the others, you can say which specific town you want to work in.
Yeah, and also one thing I actually wanted to mention about GABA was, I'm pretty sure they're one of the few Aikawas that are very willing to hire people who don't have English as a first language.
Yeah, that's true. Lots of them, English has to be a first language, but
yeah,
for ones like GABA, it can just be that you have to have English to a native level.
Depending on where you're from, even if your English is really good, it might impact where you can teach, unfortunately.
Yeah, and one more thing I'll add as well is depending on where you want to work, you might have to have some real world experience. So some of the Aikawas, if you're working with business people, they will prioritise applicants who have corporate experience, like office experience, over someone who's fresh out of university. So if you've just finished uni and you want to go immediately to Japan, that's like a cool goal, but don't be downhearted if you don't get in to the programs you apply for. Because, like me and Soumya, we finished our degrees. Like I'd been working at the university for a bit where Soumya finished his. And then we went back to Christchurch and we both worked in offices for like a year to save money. Which I think in the long run, like super benefited us. Because the clients, the students you're interacting with, especially if you choose to do one-on-one adult classes, are often business people. So if you have that background in the same environment as them, that's considered like a big plus. So, you don't need to rush into teaching in Japan. You can, like, take your time gaining experience.
Yeah. All right, well, thank you very much for listening to this Gaijin Guide, and we will see you next time. Bye.
Bye.